We got a pretty standard Model S delivery event last night. Sorry for no sudden surprises or any Easter eggs or any of the stuff really we were hoping for between Cybertruck updates or Roadster reveal or any kind of thing like that. But there are some little details that I think could be easily glossed over that I wanted to highlight in today's video. And probably one of the biggest ones was Elon actually alluding and confirming the next generation of supercharging. So with V3 supercharging now, we peak at about 250 kilowatts. Now, you're not charging at that speed for very long because to preserve battery health, they kind of have to slow down after you get through that initial charge phase. But Elon at this event actually started dropping numbers, saying that in the future they're going to be looking at 280, 300, up to 350 kilowatts. Because of how casually he dropped that information and of tweets he's made in the past about 350 kilowatts is a mere child's toy, it does make me wonder if they'll ever end up doing faster than that with V4, but the last time we ever got any kind of illusion of faster charging was with the Cybertruck unveil. That's where he said it would go over 250 kilowatts worth of charging, but they didn't get into any specifics. Now we have Elon on the record saying 350, so we'll find out if they stick to that. But in my opinion, one of the coolest new updates from the refreshed Model S is this updated user interface, which we finally got some new footage of how this interface will interact. It feels very iPad-like, especially having the little tab bar at the top of their Spotify window, and you're able to drag that over to the side. You're able to swipe down on your Now Playing tab and have that really small, and it even looks like you can customize the different options in the menu bar. Now, a lot of those menu icons were kind of colorful, and they looked kind of tacky to me. I think I might want them just a tad more minimal, but just the idea of having more floating windows around, and you don't have to worry about having your Autopilot visualizations on that display as well. And I love that it's a 17-inch display. It looks absolutely fantastic, and I'm happy with the UI changes thus far. It definitely looks a lot different from the beta versions of V11 we covered a couple months back. It looks a lot more refined, a lot more ironed out, and I'm glad that they changed it. And I think that we might get some kind of version of this software on the Model 3 and Y, but because those vehicles don't have driver displays, they're still going to have to accommodate on a smaller screen that displays more information like your speed, your visualizations around the car. So if you were hoping for this kind of drastic UI to come to the 3 and Y, I'm sadly gonna have to say I don't think so. I think for the most part your 3 and Y UI might stay mostly the same, but hopefully just some more menu customization options and having more floating window support so that, hey, if you want your visualizations to fill 2/3 of the screen or if you want them to fill up 1/4 of the screen, you'd just be able to dynamically adjust that. And like a giant classroom of children, people at the event were begging Elon to add waypoints, and it basically appeared that since enough people at that event cheered for waypoints, they're now going to add waypoints, which for some reason Elon has just been so against for many, many years. Not exactly sure why, but he seemed upset that they have caved in on that one and will eventually add waypoints, maybe give it 2 weeks or so. So obviously the auto shift functionality has been demonstrated in a getting to know your Model S video, which is kind of cool. They showed how by default, if you don't want to have the auto switching of directions, you'll just be able to swipe up or down on this little car icon on the display. In my opinion, that won't even take much of a learning curve, because right now, if you want to go and drive a reverse, you're reaching around the steering wheel and pushing down on a gear stock. Now you're just reaching around the yoke and going up and down on the display, which is already right there. So for manual shifting, I don't honestly think it will be that difficult to get used to, and the automatic shifting, in my experience, the majority of times I'm parked somewhere, there's usually a fairly obvious object either behind or in front of me, and I do believe that there is enough software in the world to detect that, okay, they probably want to go forward, or okay, they probably want to go backward. And I'm obviously very interested to try that in the real world to see how good this computer is at guessing, especially not so much that, okay, you know, he's parked in a parking space, he needs to go backward because there's a wall in front of him, but also how well is the computer able to detect when I'm done going backwards? Does it wait until I go to complete zero and then start moving forwards, or am I still gonna have to interact with the display every time I'm like, okay, done going backwards, let's go forward now? Real world use case will be interesting to actually see that demonstrated. But because of no gear stocks, a lot of people were curious, how do you activate Autopilot? There wasn't actually much information from Tesla in the past few months on how Autopilot is turned on. It looks like you're basically just going to be pressing in on that right scroll wheel. So in the settings option, you can decide if you want just one press to turn on Autopilot or one press to turn on adaptive cruise control, and then maybe doing 2 presses to activate actual Autopilot. But if you don't care as much about adaptive cruise control and you just want to go straight into Autopilot, you'll only have to press it at once, which in my opinion is probably a much more simple, elegant feature. And in that Getting to Know Your Model S video, they showed on the steering yoke that there is a difference between pressing lightly and then pressing a bit more firm on these different capacitive buttons. So if you want, you'll be able to just press and hold the blinker button and your blinker will stay on until you release. Or if you just want to press the blinker button once, it will stay on until you press that button again or you complete your turn. That was a cool little nice touch that I wasn't expecting them to make. Also, you have a windshield wiper button on the steering yoke, and the left scroll wheel will decide if you want to go faster or you can just leave it on auto. And looking through the driver's manual, we also saw reference to that if the display is off for some reason and you can't go forward or backwards, there is actually going to be some buttons right beneath the capacitive phone chargers that allow for park, neutral, reverse, and drive. So just in the event of the display crashing or something's wrong with the software and you can't change the direction of the car, there will be a manual override button there. And I'm not exactly sure what it looks like because all the pictures of the Plaid Model S we've seen, I don't really see any buttons there. Maybe they're kind of invisible or only light up in certain situations. I'm not sure, but the good news is if the car is traveling over a certain speed, which I'm fairly certain is pretty low, it's probably going to be like 5 or 10 miles an hour, then you won't be able to switch it into reverse on the freeway. So don't worry about suddenly going backwards at a high rate of speed. The car will make it painfully obvious if it's set in reverse, and it allows for a much cleaner, more minimal interior with no gear stocks and a very minimal steering yoke, which I'm still in love with. I get that for turning and stuff, people are probably not going to be super comfortable with it at first. It'll be a bit of a learning curve, but I think ultimately there will be a bit of a muscle memory people get used to. And one question that I had for the longest time is if Tesla was going to update the Autopilot icon to instead be a steering yoke instead of a steering wheel. And looking through the driver's manual, yes, they did. I'm glad Tesla pays attention to those kinds of details. So yeah, when you're on Autopilot, you'll see a different icon now when you have a steering yoke equipped Tesla. I'm guessing that means for the Cybertruck as well. When you turn on Autopilot or full self-driving, you're also probably going to see a steering yoke version of the Autopilot icon. Looking throughout the user manual, I also discovered that the rear seats have manual latches underneath a cover if the car loses power and you want to open the back seats, which currently on 3s and Ys, I'm pretty sure that's only an option on the front doors, and if you're in the back, you have to crawl out the front. But the number of situations where the car completely loses power is not many, but it is a good safety feature to have, and it's good to know that even if you're in the back seat, you'll be able to manually unlatch that door in an emergency. You also just have to press a little bit harder on that windshield wiper icon for it to actually start spraying the cleaner, and I love how basic and minimal that windshield wiper fluid is to just spray out alongside wherever the windshield wipers are. So far, we don't know much about the game library. All they talked about at the event when they were saying that it has, PS5 level graphics is that it can play Cyberpunk at a full 60 FPS, and a few YouTubers got a hold of a custom Tesla Xbox controller, which was kind of cool to see. I wish they would actually sell those. That would be great. And another little detail I didn't know about is Elon Musk said that the Type-C ports in this vehicle support a full 36 watts, which means that even if you're using a 13-inch laptop or a MacBook or something in this vehicle, you'll actually be able to charge that whole thing at 36 watts, which in previous generation Teslas, Type-C port, I believe, was limited to 10 or 12 watts, which meant trying to charge your laptop off of that was pretty slow or impossible. Now knowing they've beefed them up a little bit means that things like the MacBook Air or the smaller size MacBook Pros should actually be able to gain quite a bit of charge when you plug them in there. 16-inch MacBook Pro, maybe not so much. That will require a little bit more power, but it's nice to know they put that kind of attention to detail. They also talked a lot about safety, about how the NHTSA tested this new generation Model S, and it got one of the lowest probability of injury during a collision of all the vehicles they've ever tested. The only vehicle to be a slightly better rating apparently was the rear-wheel drive Tesla Model 3. Maybe because there's no motor in the front there, it's able to have more of a crumple zone or something, or the weight is lower and that helps with safety reasons, but still one of the safest Teslas they've ever built, and of course, fastest mass production vehicle of all time. Yes, there are a couple of vehicles in the $1 million range that are going to have limited production runs of like 20 vehicles or 100 vehicles, but these are actually going to be mass produced at scale. There's going to be thousands of them coming out a week just within the next quarter, and they're going to be 5-person sedans that can do 0 to 60 in less than 2 seconds. So that's just going to be an insane amount of performance on city streets. Also, active noise cancellation should make the inside of the vehicle very, very quiet even when you're traveling at high speeds. Although the one downside that I was not happy about was the sudden $10,000 price increase on the Plaid Model Model S. I thought there may have been some secret there. Maybe Tesla was sandbagging range or something and we were going to get more information at the event, but no, actually the opposite. This morning they updated the long-range Model S range to be about 7 miles lower, and with the Arachnid wheels, they actually perform a little bit worse than originally expected, now showing a range of 348 miles, which is about 2 miles lower than the range they originally were saying just a week or so ago. So they are still using 18650 batteries. These are not 4680s. There don't appear to be any single piece castings or structural battery pack of any kind. I'm assuming that's going to help with the profitability of this vehicle. Although a lot of work went into these motors, and Elon Musk considered it like alien technology with these highly precise carbon fiber woven pieces. And they talked about how the horsepower stays above 1,000 the entire time you go up to 200 miles an hour. That's just an insane amount of RPM. Apparently these motors get up to 20,000 rotations per minute because it's a single speed vehicle that's still technically capable of hitting 200 miles an hour. Although Tesla warned that you have to have certain tires in a certain environment for that to be possible, which makes sense. I don't think we want 200 mile per hour vehicles on everyday city streets. Either way though, I do love the design of the vehicle. This is absolutely my favorite sedan on the market, and I love the range, I love the software, I love the design, I love the features, and absolutely, if I was in a different financial situation, I would be heavily considering buying one right now, but very difficult to justify when you drive less than 5 miles a day. And I'm happy to see that even this six-figure sedan from Tesla is able to retain luxury features like radar and lumbar support, which are no longer present on the Model 3 and Y. Of course, I'll do my best to test drive one of these vehicles as soon as it's available. I keep reaching out to Tesla and asking when that's going to be possible. They were originally saying March for a long time. Obviously, that didn't happen, but as soon as I can, I will cover it. I will check it out myself. Thank you all for watching. Hope you have an excellent rest of your day. Take care.